We are a movement that is loosely held together by a shared set of values, a dynamic sense of calledness, sentness. Each of us feels and has been called by God to do something. And so we go do that thing or try or stumble along. And that, in many ways, is what we have in common. And so the underground as I don't know what you'd say, an organizational entity operates with an equally unique financial model. So I probably, more than anybody in the room, I probably have the opportunity to talk about the underground in more places and to more people, particularly church types or church leader types. And they're always very smitten or taken with our approach, but then it comes that sort of that difficult question like, but how do you pay for it all? Because it's fine to say we give everything away for free, We give all these services away for free. We have, 20 people on staff, and all they do is give it away for free. The facilities are all free. That sounds great, except where does all this money come from? And what I always tell them, the story I always tell them, is a story about the core missionary community gives sacrificially. That's the root of it. Now, we raise money outside of what this community gives. This is like, we would almost call this, our money, common purse. And so the missionary community itself puts in all that it can. And that money becomes how we operate our kind of core services. And so I know many of you know that. A lot of you in the room have been a part of the underground and giving to the underground, contributing for years. Some maybe are newer, and some of you, I know this will be the first time sort of exploring this question or topic, but it's appropriate and it's right for us as stakeholders, as shareholders in the underground experiment, in this unique missionary community. It's important for you to know how we're using money, where it's going, and the philosophy and the heart behind how we use money and where it's going. So even if this is not news to you, it's good to have a quick refresher. Having said that, I'm going to go through this part tonight pretty fast. So I hope everyone got a copy of Foreground. Did you get a copy of Foreground when you came into the conference? So you probably don't have that with you now. If you did, you could turn to the back page. But if you don't, I'll walk you through the salient points myself. But if you are new to the community, how we do it seems sort of miraculous, and it is. How we do it is we don't talk a lot about money. We probably should talk more about it, but we don't. We don't beat that drum. Instead, what we do is once a year, we lay out what it takes and what we need, and then you guys decide what you can or will contribute to that common purse, and that becomes our operating budget. It's that simple. So there's a little bit of stretching, a little bit of hope that goes into this budget process every year. And so I know that you have to come every year to the same place between you and God to say, okay, Lord, what can I give? What should I give? The only thing I'll say authoritatively as a leader, as your friend, is you should give something. To say, I want to take services from the underground, I want to enjoy this community, I even want to think positively about it, talk about it, but I'm not going to contribute $1 to its functioning is highly, highly problematic. And if that's your attitude or opinion, I guess I would just say go to somebody who has spiritual authority in your life and confess that and talk it through. It's not for me or for any other human being to tell you what that number should be, but I think everyone should feel like if this has value to you, you invest in it, you believe in it. So I just think that goes without saying. So what I need to do by way of sort of like annual meeting, reporting to you, because most of you in this room are donors, you're shareholders in the work of the underground, and so you have a right and actually an obligation to know and hear and be updated on how we used your money, how it was spent. And for those of you that would consider this year again becoming shareholders, becoming people that give to this common budget, you need to know where the money would go if you gave it this year. So thankful for Anthony for putting this together. So this was last year's budget. It was about $600,000, and this is how we spent it. $122,000 of the $600,000 total was spent on facilities, aside from the 60-some missionaries that use it for office space on a weekly basis. There were 940 discrete events that were held in this building by you guys, by your ministries. So that's almost 1,000. We almost hit 1,000. Close to 2,000 people used this building last year for some sort of conference experience, which again saves tremendous money for the kingdom. So we're talking about like an investment of money that actually produces ministry that other microchurches don't have to spend money on. And so there's a return on investment there. Giving a little bit of money to this facility means that almost 1,000 events didn't have to be sub-funded somehow. And so my guess is, I've never really done the math on that, but my guess is we save thousands of dollars because we're willing to fund something that is a collective, that is a co-op, that we all share and use. So it's a good use of money, that's obvious, but it also is about maximizing kingdom money, kingdom dollars. So movement services, for example, one of the things that we do just as a whole, instead of serving, part of that is serving all of you. So all the movement services is serving all the microchurches, all the things we do to serve microchurches, and also starting other movements around the world, which I think now we're at maybe 11 cities. And I think there are maybe 7, Jeremy, is it right? There's maybe 7 cities visiting this weekend, 7 sort of delegations, 7 city delegations that are sort of asking the question, could we do something like the underground in our city? So that's all part of the work we're doing too, and also serving movements around the world, serving them the same way we serve microchurches, giving them financial services, giving them coaching, going out to visit them, helping them when there's discipline problems or issues or whatever, providing supervision. We do that. But one of the things we did this last year, which was fresh and new, is to create almost like a new department for this idea of medical services for people in need in your microchurches. And so the free clinic was born this year under Catherine's leadership and Belinda and others that are doing things. Yep. So that number, the 70 patients that are enrolled, that's not just random people. That's your people. That's your people. So the concept is everything we do, all these departments we do for you. We do them to serve you, to help you succeed, to help you thrive. And so when you're bumping into somebody who you really love and you really want to work with, and they can't get in to see a doctor, and we keep hearing that need, we think, okay, our people love and serve the poor, particularly those who maybe don't have access to something like medical care. How can we give that to them? How can we provide that to them? That's not just one thing. That's what we do every day. That's what we're thinking about every day, to try to find a way to continue the existing services we have for you, but then also create new ones like this. And this was at significant cost to us. Even I participated in that and gave a lot of my time to try to help that happen. And then something like Crucible, that's a part of movement services, just running that every week to have it be available to like serve you, encourage you, strengthen you, help tell the story of your ministry and our movement. So training is a smaller percentage. So Anthony's given us 500 attendees using our classes this last year. 75% of microchurches use training. Maybe $25,000 is spent in the finance department. But to be fair, almost all of these departments have augmented numbers. So many of our staff take a little bit of money from your common purse. I try to sort of like distribute that throughout all the staff a little bit, but it's not enough. It's not enough to pay their salaries. It's not enough to live on. So almost all of us do additional fundraising, which means we go out and find other benefactors, other patrons who see our ministry, our mission to you as worthy of supporting. So not only are we, serving you guys, but we're even willing to go out and get our salary somewhere else. Which is just, again, you have to understand, that doesn't exist in the church world. There's no comparison. Parachurches will do that. But in a church world where an offering is collected and that kind of thing, it's just not done. But we're that committed. And really, there has to be sacrifice at every level for this economic model to work. And I'll come back to that in a second. There has to be sacrifice from you. There has to be sacrifice from us as the staff. And there has to be sacrifice for the movement as a whole in the way that we spend and use money, or this economic model breaks down. So if you're not sacrificial, it breaks down. If the staff are refusing to be sacrificial, I have to be paid $75,000 or $80,000 a year, or I'm not going to work here because I deserve it, and I could turn around and go get that at any church in America tomorrow, which I could. I'm thinking I could get more than that. I could just decide to sell out and say I want to be an executive pastor somewhere, and I could get $100,000 a year. But I have to sacrifice too. I have to say I'll live on $35,000 a year because that's all I really need, in point of fact. And each of us at each level, and then as a movement, when we get all the money collected, it has to be sacrificial. It has to hurt. And if you look around this room, all of these posters represent, and I'll explain this later, but they represent where the other half of the money goes. This is just half of what you gave. And where the other half of the money goes, it goes out to you, to the stuff you're doing, and stuff all over the world. So the finance department processed, $1.7 million. And just one example of something that they worked to do was to provide, to help those of you that were ready get your own 501c3 and do things like board development and all that. We're engaged in that. Not to mention the day-to-day work of processing all your donations, giving you advice, coaching through all the financial stuff, doing all the tax work and things that are necessary. But it's a lot. Each department is working and doing a tremendous amount of work for very little money. Media, 75. So that little department just cranked out 75 custom graphic pieces for you guys last year, and it's good. It's good stuff too. Yeah, it's really good. Which is about 30 of your ministries were using the media department last year, and they're always working, always producing. In a traditional church form where you're told to put your tithe into the storehouse, test God and see, bring your tithe into the storehouse, this is what the storehouse looks like. 48% of the money that you put to that offering plate that passes by would go to pastoral staff kind of wages. And in many cases, like a group our size and with our budget would typically produce a staff of about 4. And we have almost 20 people on staff. So I want you to put that in perspective too. Your little drop, your little gift, how it's spent among staff produces all. We're sacrificial too, so we're ready to jump in. So you get a lot more for your money. We spend 23% of our total budget. Buildings and operations in a traditional church model is 39%. It's hard for us to beat that by a lot because buildings are buildings and the electric bill is the electric bill. And it's not like we can go tell TECO we're a missional movement and we're doing things differently and we have a different economic model. So if you could charge us 60%, that would be great. They don't actually care. And when you guys leave the air conditioner on in the banquet room and stuff like that, we still have to pay for that. So, but still, we save. Even there, we save in terms of facilities stuff. And then, of course, something like servicing debt. Typical church would maybe spend 4% of their annual giving would be spent on servicing debt. We have no debt. We don't service debt at all. And then let's look at the reverse side. The reverse side would be global giving in the average church is about 5% of what it takes in. It's 28% of what you give. And then local giving, it's probably hard to see, about 4%. And then ours is about 22%. So that's about 50%. And whereas the average church would give maybe less than 10%, which where I come from, that's called hypocrisy, because they're telling everyone they should tithe 10% of their money. That's what God said. Test him and see. And yet most churches don't even tithe to the work of God in the world with the giving that people put in the plate. So we've always thought that's a problem, not to mention the fact that we come from one of the richest countries in the world. And even though you may not feel very wealthy, come with us this summer to Haiti. Come to the Haiti Mission School. Come with us this summer to Manila, Philippines, and see how your colleagues, see how your counterparts live, and see what they live on. And you realize when you're there, and many of you have already seen that. You realize when you're there that we have an obligation to share at a higher level than we are currently sharing. Because when we take up money, we have to say, okay, our work is not the only work that matters. But anywhere that the kingdom is happening, it's part of the family of God. And when they have nothing or very little, and we have so much, is it right for us to just keep spending all our money on ourselves? Or maybe spend more money on our salaries, or more money on making a really cool Children's Promise Playland with a Noah's Ark and storm systems and whatever, when our colleagues like Ate Patsky this morning, when her salary is $500 a month to support her whole family. It just doesn't feel right. So our connection, our sort of familial connection around the world just changes the game a little bit. It changes the dynamics. And we have an obligation to that. So let's look at this year. We just barely made budget this last year. Just by the skin of our teeth, I think it was like December 29th that we made budget. So thanks for that, guys. I'm 100% sure that takes a week off of Brooke's life. She's gonna die a little sooner because of that. So this year, I just want to show you the change. So from last year, there's not massive change from last year to this year in terms of this budget. It's basically the same number that I want us to shoot for. Basically, facilities essentially the same as a small bump up. Movement services represents a small dip, and one of the reasons why is because of my job change and also Jeremy's job change. So I'm trying to step out of this budget. So that none of the money comes to me, none of the money is shared with me this year, and I'll explain that maybe in a minute why. So that's why there's a little bit of decline, and I'm trying to move Jeremy's work because he's going to be doing more international work into the international side of the budget. So that represents a small decline in where the money would go. I think training is essentially the same. Finance is actually going to be a little bit less because we have other ways to get money, other ways to generate income for that department. Media is going to go up slightly because we need to add more. We've had to add staff. We need to add staff in that department because the demand is so high and the workload is so big. Also to continue to serve us. So as we expand what we're doing, they have a bunch of jobs for me. They have a bunch of jobs for international partners and sister movements, plus all of our growing microchurch work. We grew this last year more. We added more microchurches. I think it was 49 or 50 microchurches in 2016. And that represents our highest growth kind of jump in our history. So I think we're at 161 ministries in the network. So that, all I'm saying is every time we add a microchurch, we want the full portfolio of services to be given to them for free. But every time you add someone, that's, in theory, that's more work, or could potentially be more work. So at some point, we have to start adding hands to do that work. At some point, you can't just keep adding it onto the plate of the existing staff. And then local grants is a slight shift, and translocal. So you'll see a little money in this budget. If you really analyzed it, I'm pushing a little more money into translocal than local. It's not much. The change is negligible, and the total is actually more on that side of the equation. Do you feel a sense of, appreciation or thankfulness for the way we use your money? Because I hope you do feel that. Because it's like really a worthy gift. And again, our economic model, and understand, every single ministry has to operate with an economic model. Even if that economic model is, I go to work and I pay for everything, which is a lot of your economic models. You have a job, and when it comes time to have church in your home and you provide a meal, you pay for it. And that's your economic model. Your economic model is, we don't collect money, I pay for everything. In fact, I want to say it's like 70%, 60-something% of our microchurches don't use money, don't take money. They use their own money. So you are already sacrificial. That's your economic model. But I think the kingdom only advances on the back of sacrifice. It started at Golgotha, when Jesus said, when John, reflecting on the love of Jesus, says, this is how we know what love is, that Jesus Christ laid down his life for his friends. That's how we know what love is. We don't even know what love was until we saw the cross. That's where it begins. The kingdom begins in an act of dying, giving away his very life for us. And so it starts there. It's built into the fabric of the true people of God, the kingdom, throughout all of history, and it found its way to us. And I know most of you are very sacrificial with your life and your time. And so, as Paul said, my prayer is that you would excel also in this grace of giving. And there are those that have greater need than we do. And we always live with that reality. So we give as much as we possibly can. That's how we give. We don't give 10%. We don't give 2%. We give as much as we possibly can, because that's how committed we are. And sometimes that's our time. Sometimes that's our energy. But it also should be our money. It should be reflected somehow in our money. And again, our economic model is, it has to, at every level, there has to be like love, blood, sacrifice. Like where you feel it. And probably nobody knows as well as I do the sacrifices and the strain that the staff make to serve you, to be in these roles. There is not a ton of honor in the staff roles. They're all servant positions, and all of them take like a fraction of what they are worth and what they should be earning. Yeah, I don't know who's clapping, but yeah. So anyway, I'm proud of you for sacrificing and giving. Thank you. Please keep it up. Please keep growing in giving. Keep stretching yourself. I'm proud of the staff, and if you can, just hug a staff. If anybody's been, if Keisha in the coaching department has been valuable to you, hug her, say thank you, because she takes less money than she could make somewhere else to do that job for us. If you think Jeremy's put together tools, or Anthony's run a seminar, or Jesse's put together a great flyer for you or something like that, say thank you and hug them and stuff, because they should be being paid more. But that's not to say that I want to pay them more, because the truth is, at each level, our economic model is built on sacrifice. And that final level is at movement level, which means I wish sometimes I could take the whole 600,000 and spend it on operations. I'd hire more people. I'd fix the roof. There's things we would do. I'd put tile in the bathroom. There's things I'd do with that money. But instead, we give half it away because it's right. Because it's right. And so we keep being pinched. And so even at a movement level, it's sacrificial. It's hard. It stretches us. We feel it. And that's how it has to be. And that's why we're able to do so much with so little. Because at every level there's this consistency in the way we do it. So thank you for giving. I guess I should say that. And then also, please pray. And please give again. Please commit again. This is how we work. This is how we do it. And I don't want to say it again. I don't want to push you or cajole you or anything. Most of you already know what you can do or are going to do. I know this is not news to most of you. But if you're new, think about it. Pray about it. And tomorrow, I think at the end, we will actually have a little moment, a little gesture where we bring our pledges and put it in a basket in the front. And it's an act of sacrifice. It's an act of commitment. It's an act of covenant with one another. I think it's actually a really cool and beautiful thing. So keep those, think about it, pray about it. And again, the only thing I'm going to say prophetically, like in your face a little bit, is please give something. Please don't just say I love this and I believe in it and I think it's important and the church should give money away and people should be sacrificial, but not me. Because all of us have the ability to give. Even the poorest among us can give something.